Good day, Year 9. It's Mr. Deaton here again. You will have noticed that the last lesson was not my own voice. It was the voice of Miss Corbett. So it will be both myself and Miss Corbett doing the Year 9 biology lessons. So, as usual, hopefully you've got your sound on, otherwise you won't be able to hear my descriptions as we go through these slides together. Just a reminder, what we are currently studying is under the Biology Paper 1 of AQA Combined Science Trilogy. Things that you are going to need for this lesson, being the same in the other two as well, is your book or some lined paper, pencil for doing any diagrams, and a pen for writing. Okay, so last lesson you were looking at specialised cells with Miss Corbett, but they were animal cells. We're going to be looking at the specialised plant cells. Please ignore about printing slides 14 to 20 as I've changed everything up. Right, so getting our brains awake. On the left-hand side, you can see that I have got 5 structures that you can find inside a cell, an organelle. Can you have a go at matching up the structure to its function? So you will need to pause the video now. Okay, welcome back. Hopefully you have had a go at matching up the structure to its function, and hopefully we've got something that looks like this. Yes, the nucleus contains DNA, or the genetic information. It controls the activities of the cell. Cell membrane is what controls what goes in and out of the cell. The cytoplasm is that jelly-like substance where chemical reactions take place. The mitochondria is where respiration takes place, which releases energy. And the ribosomes is where protein synthesis takes place. Okay, what we're going to be looking at. We're going to be looking at plant cell diagrams, and so you need to be able to identify the different cells, the different specialized cells for plants. You need to be able to describe their function. For level 5 and 6, we need to be able to compare. So looking at how the structures are different in these specialized cells compared to a generalized plant cell, which is what you're used to seeing. And 7, 8, we need to be able to discuss how the structure relates to the function. So you think of it as sort of the adaptations. And then something that you can do after the end of this lesson is designing your own cell. Could be a tissue, it could be an organ, but it's going to perform a function, and you've got to think about what adaptations it would actually have. Okay, so let us begin. So there are over 220 different types of specialized cells in our body. So you did a lot about this with Ms. Corbett last lesson. On the slide, you can see some different specialized cells because no two types of cells are the same. We've got some bone cells, some skin cells, the different blood cells, some epithelial cells, which were mentioned in the prokaryotic eukaryotic lesson. They've got these little hair-like structures that waft the dust and the bacteria and things like that away from your lungs. We've got cardiac muscle cells, so that's what you find in your heart muscle. We've got skeletal muscle cells and smooth muscle cells. If any of you do PE, you might be familiar with those 3 different muscle groups. We've got a neuron, which you would have done as a nerve cell in year 7. And then we have got some different plant cells. So if you have a look at the diagram, which is a cross-section of a leaf underneath there are over 220 different types of specialized cells in your body. You'll see that there's a palisade layer, so they contain palisade cells. You've got the upper epidermis, so they will contain specialized cells. You've got a mesophyll layer, which is the spongy layer, so that contains specific types of cells. And you've got things like guard cells. So plants have specialized cells too, and they're often, most of the time, aiding or specialized to aid photosynthesis and maintain the internal conditions. Okay, now on this slide you will see that there is a lot of blank spaces, because what you're going to be doing before I go through the four main ones is actually finding out some information for yourself. So what I would like you to do is print this slide, this picture that has a blank Facebook profile. You are going to choose 3 specialized plant cells out of the following that I'm about to mention, that you can go and find information about yourself. So the 3 cells you can have out of the following 4. So root hair cell, a Palisade cell, Xylem tubes, and Phloem tubes. So I need you to pick 3 of those, pop it on the Facebook profile pages, and then I'd like you to find out where they're found, what their job is, and what adaptations they have. So adaptations are things, structures, or things that they have that made them better at their task. Once you have done that, come back to this presentation. I'm going to go over the 4, just the real basics, which hopefully you will have already got, and that will be our lesson. Okay, so if you could pause this now, complete that task, and I will see you in a few minutes. Okay, welcome back. So hopefully we have done our own little bit of independent learning, and we have picked our 3 different specialized plant cells and found out a little bit more information on it. I'm going to go through the 4 different ones that you need to know for the specification. So if they are one that you have done, you can add information if necessary to your Facebook profile. And then obviously you're going to have one that you won't have done. So you will need to make sure that that is in your notes. Okay, so our first one will be one that comes up in year 7. It is a root hair cell. And this is not talking about the hair on your head. This is looking at root hairs, which you find in the roots of plants. Okay, now on the 2 pictures. On the top picture is just a picture of some roots, and you will see that they start off large and then they get smaller and smaller and smaller. Underneath it is a root hair cell. Excuse me. So these are the structures that you will find on the roots, and they're really, really important because their function, as you can see, is absorbing water and minerals from the soil. Please do not say absorbs water and nutrients from the soil. It's not nutrients, it is minerals. So things like magnesium and phosphorus that they need in order to build their own different structures inside them. Now, their adaptations, what they have that is special, what makes them different to a general plant cell, is they've got a very large surface area. And that is provided by this projection that you can see coming from the side of the cell. That increases the surface area. That means more water and minerals can be absorbed. They have a very thin cell wall. That's going to be really, really useful because it means that more stuff can be absorbed in a quicker time. So that's root hair cells. If there's anything that you missed from your profile, then please add it on. Or if you didn't do root hair cells, make a note of anything that you need. You may want to pause the video. Okay, specialized cell number 2 is a Palisade cell. Now, from about 3 slides ago, 2 or 3 slides ago, there was a picture called, which was the cross-section of the leaf, and it had a Palisade layer. And in that Palisade layer, which is towards the top of the leaf, you'll find these Palisade cells. And they're really, really important because their function is to absorb sunlight, and it's where most of the kind of photosynthesis happens. So they're really important in making glucose for the plant. Their structure, they're found at the top of the leaf. So that's where most of the light will obviously hit the leaf. They're very tall and have a large surface area. Now, being tall means that they can pack in more chloroplasts. It's more likely that the light from the sun will be absorbed in those structures. So really, really useful cell. They are called Palisade cells, and those are the adaptations. So if you need to, please can you add anything that you've missed onto your profile grids, or if you've chosen not to do this one, make any relevant notes from that. You may wish to pause the PowerPoint. Okay, let's have a look at the next one. It is Xylem tubes, Xylem XYL, Xylem tubes. Now, Xylem tubes, obviously made up of cells, that form or produce these tubes where water and minerals move around the plant. So this is going from those root hair cells, from the roots, where the root hair cells are, that we looked at a couple of slides ago. And this is taking that water and minerals all around the plant where it's needed. The vessels or the tubes are made up of dead plant cells. Now, this will be the only specialized plant cell that you need to know about that is made of dead plant cells. That is important because, as you can see in the third bullet point, it allows them to have thick, strengthened cellulose cell walls, okay, with a hollow lumen. That's the bit in the middle. So because they're dead, it means they haven't got a nucleus, and the cells are strengthened with extracellulose so that they can form these strong tubes that have a hollow bit in the middle, which is the lumen, and that's really important in transporting water around. Now, that process of the water moving around is called transpiration, which we'll look at in a further chapter. Okay, so if you chose not to do Xylem, then you'll need to make a note of the relevant information, which is on this slide. These are the most important parts. If you did, then if you want to add anything extra to what you've done on your Facebook profile, then now is the time. If you'd like to pause it, then that's fine. Okay, our last specialized cell in plants are the phloem tubes. Okay, now these tubes are involved in a process called translocation, and that's moving food substances around the plant. So obviously the glucose is made in the leaves because that's where photosynthesis happens in those Palisade cells, but then it needs to be transported around the plant, and it does that using these phloem tubes, and that whole process is called translocation. So transpiration is to do with water and the xylem tubes. Translocation is to do with the phloem. So this is the movement of food substances up and down the stems to growing tissues and storage tissues. So things like potatoes are a way of storing glucose in the form of starch. So they are not just there, they don't just grow them for humans to eat, they are there to store that excess food. These vessels are made from living plant cells. So these are not dead cells like in the xylem. They are living. You'll notice that they form these tubes where you have these sort of sieve plates in between them, and that controls what can actually pass through them. You'll also notice that there are these companion cells which, as the name suggests, are a companion for the cell because they are the ones that are providing the relevant energy, things like that. So obviously they have got lots of mitochondria. Now here is a picture just so it is clear to you for a root hair cell. So you can see these little tiny thin projections on the picture on the left. And then on the right hand side, we can see it's under the microscope, how all of these root hair cells vastly increase the surface area, allowing maximum amounts of water and minerals in, because even though on their own they're very, very small, because there's so many of them, it greatly increases the amount of surface area. Okay, I'd like to finish on a question. And the question that I would like you to have a go at answering in your books is describe the features you would look for to decide on the function of an unknown specialized plant cell. So what that means is if you were given a cell, a specialized cell that you didn't know from a plant, what structures would you look at inside the cell to decide what its function is going to be? Okay, and I've put this down as 4 marks, but there's lots of different things that you could talk about. So I'd like you to pause the PowerPoint at this point and have a go at answering that question as best you can. Right, welcome back. So we're going to go over the answers so you can tick where you have done these different answers in your answer, if that makes sense. It's worth 4 marks, so we need to get 4 points in it. So things that you might have spoken about are below. Now I know it says 6 marks at the top, but made this 4 marker. So hopefully we have stated 4 of these and said why you might have included it. So something that you might have looked for were chloroplasts. So if there were lots of chloroplasts in a specialized cell, then it probably means, or it definitely will mean, that it's mostly focusing on photosynthesizing. So that's going to be its main function, is photosynthesis, because it contains lots of chloroplasts. One that is slightly trickier is you could have a look at the size of the large vacuole, okay, another structure that is specific to plants in terms of lesson 1, where we're looking at the difference between plant and animal cells. And if it's got a large vacuole, it means it's probably associated with the role of osmosis. Now, osmosis comes up in the next week's lessons, but it is something that did come up as well at Key Stage 3, so very well done if you remembered that. Now, you might have said something about whether it has extracellulose or something like lignin that is in the cells, because that, like in the xylem tubes, because that is probably indicating that it's there for strengthening the plant because they don't have a skeleton, or to do with the transport of materials such as water. You might have said that you were looking for sieve plates or companion cells, because that's going to be to do with the transport of dissolved food, because sieve plates and companion cells are only found in phloem vessels. And lastly, you might have spoken about mitochondria, because remember, mitochondria are involved in respiration. So they are producing energy, and it's not just, energy isn't just for moving muscles. All organisms need energy to move things around in the cell or out of the cell or into the cell. So if you saw lots of mitochondria, then it's probably going to be to do with moving substances from one place to another. A good example, excuse me, good example is in the root hair cells, where you've got to move the minerals from the outside, from the soil, into the cells. Okay, that concludes our lesson on specialized plant cells. I hope that you have taken from this different types of specialized cells in plants, but also what their role is and how they are adapted to that role. Stay safe, and I will see you. Well, I won't see you. I will be sending out the next set of lessons the week after. Take care and have a good weekend.